Thank you so much for joining us. There are some other chairs up here in the front. I see a lot of folks standing in the back, so there's some open seats in various places, and let us know. We could probably get more chairs too for the crowd. But I so appreciate everyone taking the time to join us this morning. Thank you to our cabinet chiefs and city teams and everyone who has put in so much effort to make sure that this budget could be presented today. Thank you to our city councilors and all of their teams also for their due diligence, as we've already this year in some ways differently and innovatively have already been a little bit in the middle of the budget process by this time. I want to thank Council President Lujen and Chair of Ways and Means, Worrell, for really working to think about how we could deliver this very first proposed version of the budget in a much more collaborative way as well. So I know the council has already been hosting hearings on the budget to hear feedback from residents and to talk with our cabinet chiefs and officials about how the budget was implemented over the last year, starting as early as this fall. So we have done our best to incorporate the big picture priorities that you all have communicated to us through this first version, and we look forward to continued due diligence and vetting over the next few months. So before I launch into just a few opening thoughts and then hand it over to our incredible Chief Financial Officer, Ashley Grafenberger, and her team to go through the details, I do just want to pause for a second and ask us to reflect a bit in solidarity with our community members who are mourning the losses from the horrible tragedy in Santo Domingo. The losses now continue to grow, and the latest count that I saw was nearly 100 lives claimed in just a terrible tragedy. And I know many members of our community locally are deeply connected and have directly experienced the grief of losing a loved one in this tragedy. So just wanted to ask for a moment of silence. Thank you. Estamos al tanto de la tragedia en Santo Domingo y me imagino lo difícil que es este momento para nuestra comunidad dominicana aquí en Boston. Sé que palabras no son suficientes, pero quiero que sepan que Boston está con ustedes hoy y siempre, y mi más sentido pésame. So again, we just stand with all of our residents here in Boston who are mourning the losses, and we know that words aren't enough to try to ease the pain, but we are here and continue to pray. Okay. So the type of collaboration that we are blessed to enjoy from our city councilors and that we've already seen in getting to this point in the budget process is the type of collaboration that we're going to need across the entire city in every sector in this moment. I've been checking the headlines, I've been monitoring the financial markets, and it's not pretty, and it looks like to be getting even worse. Our families and our communities are already under intense stress with costs of living and other difficulties, and the actions currently that we're seeing in federal policy are making it even worse. Come on in, Councilor Mejia. Seats here, seats here. We already are seeing that tourism is down from Canada, one of our strongest sources of economic partnership with this New England region, and from visitors all across the world, tied to immigration policies and how they've been implemented, and tied to other economic policies as well. We've seen that our core industries here in Boston, life sciences, higher education, healthcare, research, are all being targeted and threatened with the risk of losing billions of dollars in funding, which for us translates into jobs for our residents and employment being threatened that really threatens people's ability to put food on the table, not even to mention the critical importance of the research to saving lives and creating opportunity for generations to come. We in our city budget rely every year on $300 million of federal funding that so far has been relatively legally protected, but we know that right now the law is not seen as a boundary either, and so we need to be preparing for the worst in every case. And as I referenced most recently, with the introduction of federal tariff policy, stock market is down nearly 20% since January. The S&P 500 has experienced losses of $5.8 trillion in the last 4 days, the steepest 4 days of declines since this index was created in the 1950s. And so we need to be prepared, as every city is buckling down, for the potential of serious financial crisis triggered by federal economic policy under this administration. Under this federal administration, the only daily constant is chaos and disruption. And that means it falls to us at the city level to do our very best to partner, to collaborate, to hold strong, and to make sure that we can be a source of stability and opportunity still for our residents. Not to move backwards, even though we are hunkering down as much as we can, but to find the ways to be responsible, to be prepared, and to keep moving forward. That's what city government has always been for. We are there to help manage the unexpected and to create better quality of life for our communities, no matter what is happening in the rest of the world. Our teams respond to fires, literal and figurative. ONS and our fire department and our first responders are always there, no matter what happens. Our police officers and our community responders, public health officials, and clergy and neighborhood leaders across the city work 24 hours a day to make Boston the safest major city in the country. And we are going to keep doubling down on making sure that that is felt by everyone in every part of our city. We are also preparing for the unexpected when it comes to climate and weather events, one of the biggest threats to our safety and stability and health, and seeking to create jobs as we do so that will help power Boston for the next generations. And of course, we are finding ways to provide stability in the face of tremendous economic uncertainty, supporting our local small businesses, creating pathways to the jobs that we know are needed and critical, and providing resources wherever we can. So, this budget affirms Boston as a home for everyone, and in very difficult times, continues to prioritize critical city services, public education and services for our youth and seniors, community safety and public health, climate resilience and mobility, and housing affordability and economic opportunity. I want to be clear that our goal at the city every year is always to make sure that we are presenting the most responsible budget possible. Because of state law, because of Prop 2.5 being such a tight limit on what municipalities across the entire Commonwealth can increase their taxes and revenue sources by every single year, Prop 2.5 keeps cities capped below inflation, and we always are trying to find ways to do more with less and to respond to growing need in community. This has been working in Boston, and we are building off of a very solid financial foundation, so I want to thank the decades of folks who have helped manage our city's budget, the decades of stewardship from the City Council and colleagues. We have a AAA bond rating in Boston dating back over a decade, and that has helped us weather intense uncertainty through the pandemic and through much more. This year, we're focusing on achieving that balance point, preparing for the worst case scenarios given federal uncertainty and the larger economy, while not jumping ahead to slash city services that we know are more critical than ever for our residents and businesses. So our budget will represent a growth of 4.4% over the last year's budget, fiscal year's budget. This is at the rate of inflation. core departments are growing at 1.7%, and again, our CFO, Grafenberger, will get into some of the details on all the different revenue sources and departmental spending. We are prioritizing critical city services, but this also means, again, to prepare for worst-case scenarios, we're not adding any new headcount to our city workforce. Between vacancies and salary savings, we will see a reduction of the equivalent of nearly 500 positions this fiscal year across the city workforce, and we are proposing decreases in non-personnel line items such as equipment and supplies. This is a shared sacrifice across all of our departments to ensure that we can keep doing the work that has the most impact for our residents and to keep meeting the needs that we know are growing in community. I also want to be clear that our budget is different from the budgets of many cities around the country and how it's set up, and it's also different from how our state government's budget is set up. Because, for better or worse, we are bound by state law in the current mix of revenue sources to be so grounded in property taxes. We are also uniquely solid and resilient to short-term economic volatility. Now, this presents other stresses for our residents, and we continue to push for relief for residents who've had to bear the increased tax burden as the commercial sector has seen shifts and as they have seen a decrease in their tax burden. On that note, I also want to just flag that over the last year, as we made the case for needed relief for residents when it comes to their tax burden, there were many predictions that if we did not cut the budget last year, if we did not change our spending from the 7% that reflected the increased investments in newly settled contracts and workforce, and if we did not somehow find a 1% cut or even larger cut, then the sky would fall, and that we would be in the midst of tremendous economic uncertainty now in the city budget. That has not been the case. As we had said all last year, our budget is solid, and we are always seeking to ease the burden on residents to achieve the right balance between the residential and commercial sector, but it was never a question of whether Boston would be able to pay the bills through our budget. Our current fiscal year is proceeding just exactly as we had planned, and as those calls to cut the budget immediately in an unprecedented way that has never been done before at the city level, or the calls to immediately dip into our reserves then to be able to offset the large decreases in taxes for the commercial sector. We resisted all of those, knowing that the most responsible actions were to monitor and make sure that we'd be prepared for true economic uncertainty and potential financial crisis. Unexpectedly, we are in this moment now due to actions from this federal administration. But I want to be clear that the budget we're proposing this year is different from the one that we had proposed last year because the larger macroeconomic situation has shifted. The budgets that we have put forward every single year have delivered services to our residents, have earned us the AAA bond rating, and continue to represent strong financial health for the city of Boston and the type of management that we will continue to see throughout the year. We expect that throughout this process with the council from now until June 30th, when we finalize the budget, will continue to be very carefully tied to developments in the larger economy. And we also expect that after July 1st, when the new fiscal year's budget goes into effect, we are going to, as always, be even more diligently monitoring the day-to-day so that we can continue to adjust that budget. This budget puts forward the plan and sets the ceiling for spending in our departments, but should we need to think about ways that we are responding to immediate economic crisis even after the budget is passed, our administration has the tools to do so, and of course we would stay in close communication with the council about taking those actions. Our number one priority is to make sure that Boston is a home for everyone and that our communities here have every possible chance to live their lives, raise their families in the safest, greenest, and most family-friendly city in the country. I am so grateful for all of you. My time is up, and I am going to pass this over to our council president and Ways and Means chair. Thank you so much for your collaboration.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mira. Thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you to the Mayor's cabinet and to my colleagues. I'm Ruthie Lujan, President of the Boston City Council and at-large City Councilor. Happy Budget Day to all who celebrate. First and foremost, I want to thank the Mayor and your administration for putting forward a budget that safeguards the city's essential services. I also want to thank all of my colleagues who are here for their dedication to this critical work. I see Councillor Flynn here, Councillors Braden, Councillors Coletta Zapata, Councillor Durkin, Councillor Mejia, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Santana, Councillor Weber, and Councillor Worrell, who you will be hearing from soon for his leadership as a chair of Ways and Means. As a legislative body, as a Boston City Council, we have a very clear responsibility from this day forward to analyze and review the budget and to ensure that it reflects the needs and values of our residents. As we navigate financial uncertainty due to the cuts and chaos happening at the federal level, Boston remains strong, a city with a AAA bond rating, as the mayor stated, and smart financial stewardship. Our work on the budget as a council is to meet the needs of our residents, and that work must remain grounded in equity. This means investing in affordable housing, uplifting our immigrant communities, expanding youth jobs and senior programs, empowering our students to become future leaders, and treating community safety as both a public health and public trust issue. The Boston City Council, in conjunction with the mayor and her team, started early on the budget this year, as the mayor stated, having collaborative conversations and bringing community in as early as possible. The mayor's proposed budget, therefore, reflects much of the council's advocacy and much of what we've heard from community, thoughtfully allocating resources across our diverse departments and communities, from our youngest residents to our oldest, including millions of additional funding for our schools, which includes much-needed renovations, over $188 million for municipal facility repairs, conversations we frequently have with many of you on the Boston City Council about our community centers, our libraries. I didn't see David Leonard here, but happy National Library Week, everyone. To our firehouses and to our police stations. Investments in affordable housing, such as the Acquisition Opportunity Program, to help purchase more buildings to prevent displacement, as we saw in Mattapan. An increase in funding for operations in our elections department for updated technology and support. Deeper investments in community safety measures for violence prevention and for syringe collection. Better pay for our paras in our schools who do great work, a cornerstone of what we've been doing on the Boston City Council to advocate for our lowest paid workers. More money for accessible transportation infrastructure. Meaningful investments in climate resiliency and digital infrastructure, preparing our city for the future, furthering our work on digital equity, and streamlining and digitizing permitting for our small businesses. Support for older residents through partnerships with the Age Strong Commission to reduce social isolation and enhance well-being. Investing in a renewed animal shelter. One of our other favorite topics is trash collection, and we have here in this budget more reliable trucks and technology, which will help us deal with our rodent problem and population. And finally, accelerating key capital projects. And here I want to give a special shout out to Councillor Braden for her leadership and her advocacy on a new Jackson Man Community Center in Allston Brighton, which is included in this budget. So Councillor Braden, thank you for your advocacy for your community and the way that you riled the community and all of us together to stand in support. At its core, every year, a budget is a moral document. It's our job to make sure that it reflects the priorities and lived experiences of the people we represent. In addition, as we review this budget and do our work, the Council will continue to advocate for several of our key priorities. Increased funding and support for housing stability, emergency assistance for those tackling food insecurity in these times, banning forced brokers fees, investing in legal services and English classes, helping residents with skyrocketing costs and utility, enhancing community safety, and providing basic city services. This marks my fourth budget on the council, my fourth year on the council, and also the fourth year that the council has had the additional budgetary powers given to us by the people of Boston in 2021. I want to express my appreciation for Councilor Ed Flynn, former council president, for his past leadership when the council was first given this power and figuring out how to navigate this power. And a special thank you to who you'll be hearing from next, Councilor Brian Worrell, our current chair of Ways and Means, who shepherded us through this process last year and who is, for whatever reason, back at it again this year. I thank him for his leadership in guiding us through this process. He is the reason we were able to start earlier and start more collaboratively in this budget process to bring in community voices, not just at City Hall, but directly in community in Dorchester. And he's the reason we've had this collaboration. And so I thank you all. Happy Budget Day. We have an exciting 2 months ahead of us where we'll be asking questions and doing the work of the people. Thank you so much. I'd like to invite up Chair of Ways and Means, District 4 City Councilor Brian Worrell.
Good morning. I'm Brian Worrell, the District 4 Boston City Councilor and the Chair of the Committee on Ways and Means. I know a lot of time and effort goes into preparing this budget, so I want to start off by thanking Mayor Wu, the Office of Budget Director, Jim Williamson, CFO, Ashley Grofenberger, IGR, the entire budget management team, and all the chiefs, commissioners, directors, and city employees who are here today. I also want to thank all of my colleagues who are here, Council President Louis Jen, Councilors Braden, Councilor Weber, Councilor Coletta Zapata, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Santana, Councilor Durkin, Councilor Flynn, and the entire central staff team, especially the Ways and Means team of Karishma Chauhan and Megan Corredo. I'd like to say, welcome to budget season, but as you all know, the City Council has changed its usual way of operating and has been having FY26 budget conversations since November. And that's because we are building off of last year's in-depth analysis. We've already held 7 working sessions. We've had hearings, staff clinics, public listening sessions, and even pop-ups at local supermarkets. But to all the chiefs and executive directors who have missed out on the fun so far, don't you worry. You'll get to join in soon with over 40 departmental hearings and more than 100 hours of budget hearings scheduled before the end of May. Through all of this engagement, it is clear that investing in our residents and delivering reliable city services is what makes Boston strong. This commitment has been evident in Council's advocacy over the past 3 budget cycles. During that time, we realized millions of dollars in budgetary savings for amendments, creating new programs like Access to Council and rodent mitigation, bolstering our efficiency in ISD with plan examiners, funding grants for families of homicide victims, adding capacity to our Finance Commission, and increasing investments in existing programs such as youth jobs and housing vouchers. But we're not stopping there. The Council remains committed to pushing for investments that directly benefit our residents. And I'd like to thank the Mayor for collaborating on the budget. And in our letter to the Mayor, we advocated for 8 priorities: housing and food insecurity, because stability starts with a roof overhead and food on the kitchen table. Diversity and inclusion. While Trump and his MAGA cronies villainize our communities, here in Boston, we know our diversity is our strength. Quality of life issues, because cleaner streets, better pest control, and stronger park maintenance is essential. Youth programs. We know giving our young people access to a job, tutoring help, and a path to college or a career will brighten our entire city's future. Community safety, because when it comes to safety, we're taking a community-first approach. That means more social workers and expanding our BPD community interaction team to make sure every neighborhood feels safe. Small business assistance. We know we need financial and technical support to grow our main streets, to make certain all of our commercial districts are thriving. Government productivity, because making city services simpler and streamlined can make life a lot easier for myself and our residents and businesses. And capital projects. Yes, Boston is a world-class city. And while we made great strides in ensuring our parks, pools, libraries, and community centers reflect that, there's still more work to be done. Investing in people is how we grow our economy. When we add one more seat to universal pre-K, it's a chance for a child to get a head start in school, giving that child a better chance of academic success and a parent an opportunity to return to work or save on childcare. When we fund college and career readiness grants, we're ensuring our students see an opportunity to succeed no matter what path they choose. And when we expand access to ESOL classes, we're giving our families the tools to better compete in the workforce, start businesses, and contribute even more to our city. Approving a budget is more than ensuring your trash gets picked up or the pothole on your street gets filled. It's about passing a budget that fights displacement and creates a path to stable housing. It's about making sure every family has food on the table and a high-quality public school to send their kids. It's about investing in what makes Boston so special, ensuring this city remains a place where people want to live, grow their families, and age in dignity. Can't wait to keep the momentum going alongside the people of Boston and all of you. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Grafenberger, and I have the honor of serving as the Chief Financial Officer for the City of Boston. Welcome to the budget breakfast for the fiscal 26 operating budget and 5-year capital plan. I want to start by thanking the many people who have played a role in putting this budget and capital plan together. First and foremost, Mayor Wu, her team, and our newest budget analyst, Mira, this year, for your leadership, guidance, and participation all throughout the process. City Council, particularly Senate President Lujan and Ways and Means Chair Councilor Worrell, for their early engagement in the process. Staff of my office, as well as all of the finance cabinet for the work you do every day to ensure that the city finances are solid. And most importantly, I'd like to thank our budget director, Jim Williamson, and the entire team in the back, as always, of the Office of Budget Management. Takes a lot of long hours to put this together, but it's tireless work, and they do it not just now, but every day of the year to ensure that the budget is balanced, managed, and responsible. So thank you. Okay, so the $4.8 billion operating budget and $4.5 billion capital plan that we're here to discuss today are thoughtful, responsible financial plans that honor the city's commitment as an employer, asset owner, and service provider. This year's budget prioritizes meeting our long-term obligations and maintaining excellent city services while recognizing and adapting to the unpredictable economic climate. The recommended operating budget is projected to grow by 4.4% on an adjusted basis, which again is in line with our latest measure of inflation in the greater Boston area. The budget reflects consistent and stable revenue growth and cost increases associated with our long-term liabilities, as well as growth in education, wage and benefit costs, and the cost of doing business for many of our key city services. The FY26 operating budget reflects minimal overall growth in our city departments, limited to just 1.7% over last fiscal year, and does not include any new positions or major new programs as we prepare for uncertain economic conditions. Fiscal discipline and responsibility is not new in Boston. Because of our stable revenue sources and years of responsible budget management, earning the city a AAA bond rating for over a decade, Boston is well positioned to meet this moment of economic uncertainty. Every single year, in good times and bad, Boston has successfully balanced and managed its budget. We've been here before, and we will utilize proven strategies to get us through whatever lies ahead. Unlike many other cities, Boston's budget is stable and resilient to short-term economic volatility, but we will continue to actively monitor and manage this budget and adapt accordingly. This approach will put us in the best position to react to the changes in the federal funding landscape and evolving economic uncertainty. Now for the pie charts. These give us just a snapshot of the major revenue sources and expenditure categories in this budget. Sorry if I am in your way and you can't see. On the revenue side, of course, property tax continues to be our primary source of revenue. Property tax is incredibly stable and secure, limited by the constraints of Prop 2.5, and is less vulnerable to economic volatility. But Prop 2.5, while constrained, has a 40-year track record, and Boston's collection rate is nearly 100%. Excise revenue is our more economically sensitive revenue and exposed to economic pressures when there's less business, travel, eating out, etc. However, as you can see, that represents a relatively small share of our total revenue, just 6.4%. On the expense side, public education, BPS, and charter tuition consumes a major portion of the city's budget, nearly 40%. Public safety and operations represent over 30% of the budget, and the remainder of our budget supports fixed and non-discretionary costs like pension, debt service, and employee benefits. While this budget represents limited growth, we're focused on ensuring that our core city services can continue uninterrupted as we prepare the city for the future. This means investing in the nuts and bolts. Ensuring timely waste pickup and fewer missed collections through a modest investment in the streets cabinet. Improving residents' experience using our 311 systems and navigating our permitting and licensing by building out a new 311 constituent management technology and permitting system. And investing in our public infrastructure through our capital plan, ensuring a good state of repair for our schools and community centers, our firehouses and libraries, our streets and sidewalks. We are giving our health and safety and human services teams the resources they need to ensure that we remain the safest major city in America. Making sure our first responder workforce is fully staffed and reflects the residents of Boston through our cadet program, strengthening our violence and prevention response ecosystem, and continuing our investments in EMS to ensure improved response times. This budget also provides supports and resources that our residents can turn to when grappling with homelessness and substance use disorder, and increasing senior programming to address social isolation among our older adults. We're continuing in this budget to provide a high-quality, inclusive education to all of our students across Boston Public Schools and Boston Pre-K. As you saw before, our largest departmental budget is public education because we know that this is the best investment we can make is in our young people. The BPS budget includes investments in inclusive education, multilingual learners, and early childhood education. Further, over 30% of our general obligation bonds over the next 5 years will go to supporting BPS capital projects. We're also creating more affordable housing and home ownership opportunities for our families. In last year's budget, we made critical one-time investments in our housing and planning departments to lay the foundation for the work ahead. This year, we're expanding our downtown office to residential conversion program to local colleges, universities, and employers to create more dorms and workforce housing. We're also so excited about our co-purchasing pilot program, empowering households to combine their purchasing power and buy multifamily homes using 0% interest deferred loans from the city. And through our 5-year capital plan, we're investing $124 million in our Bunker Hill, Mildred Haley, and Mary Ellen McCormick housing developments to ensure that our residents have the high-quality, dignified housing that they deserve. And we're launching the Boston Energy Saver program, our groundbreaking new partnership with Eversource, National Grid, and the state that will deliver more than $150 million in funding so families and residents can upgrade their homes, lower their utility bills, and make Boston an even greener city. So our modest but mighty fiscal year 26 recommended budget gives us the stability to continue delivering the core services, supports, and resources that our residents depend on while making sure that we're ready to weather the economic uncertainty ahead. We're making investments in our families and our communities, and we're making sure that Boston truly is a home for everyone. Thank you.
take a couple questions for anyone who is here, including counselors or our team and cabinet.
The $300 million that we're expected to lose from federal, does that include HUD, any cuts to HUD, or is that part of the budget?
Yeah, so that $300 million includes funding that we receive from HUD. And to be clear, that $300 million is not part of the 4.8. We manage that externally, but still it does support many critical services in the city, including housing through HUD.
And I would hope, I know your question, Yahoo, was phrased as expected to lose. We're trying not to expect it. We're preparing just in case, but all of these the $300 million it's not the one-time grants, right? These are the annual core grants that have come to the city for many years, come to cities everywhere for many years, around public safety, around housing and homelessness, and other core resources, CDBG, et cetera. And these are, in many cases, congressionally appropriated and therefore legally obligated. So by law, we should be entitled to keep receiving these funds, but again, we're seeing many of the funding sources being challenged in court as they're threatened to be rescinded, and then the courts have been stepping in, so we're watching very carefully to see how that all works out.
Mayor, follow up on that. Is there a rolling timeline for these funds coming in, or is it all, you have to have it by July 1st?
They come in at different times during the year, and we, as the mayor said, these are funds that we typically receive, so we have a, cadence for when we receive them. The federal fiscal year is a little bit different than ours, and so it doesn't all have to be in by July 1st for us to, be able to utilize them throughout the year. So we just continue to monitor as those get approved.
So because we're rolling in, have some of the funds not arrived yet?
We haven't experienced any major disruptions yet, but as the mayor said, there are many sources that are being challenged, and we're just carefully monitoring if that will happen.
Would the city consider a hiring freeze, layoffs, or cutting any major programs if economic circumstances do change, like in the middle of the next fiscal year?
I mean, by law, we must have a balanced budget, and by law, cities can only spend what we have. And so it would be highly unusual. The city has never made a mid-year budget cut because these are defining positions and roles, and usually staff positions, except in the one-off cases where some situation changed at the state and then funding that was passed through the state was cut, and therefore was a sort of direct, an indirect cut to us. But should it get to that point, $300 million is a very significant chunk of funding to deliver services, and we would seek to try to preserve what our residents and businesses rely on and make the changes that are necessary. So it may, should we be entering into more serious economic crisis triggered by this federal administration, it may very well get to the point where we will need to be considering layoffs and hiring freezes. I am and this team are going to manage as hard as we possibly can to avoid that, because we know that would be not only devastating for the families and workforce of the city, but also the residents who rely on services that are provided.
But as it is now, the plan with the budget is just to not create any more new positions?
That's right. Yeah, so the difference between, correct me if I'm wrong, a hiring freeze and salary savings and eliminating vacancies is that a hiring freeze is really, in some ways, shrinking the workforce because there's always natural turnover. People leave positions or get promoted into other positions, and so there's always some segment of our workforce that's leaving those roles. A hiring freeze means that you wouldn't then backfill those roles with anyone else, and so you're effectively cutting down naturally as folks are moving on. But this budget proposes eliminating vacancies, long-time vacant roles, and salary savings, but not prohibiting backfilling roles that are really important for service delivery. Yeah, keep going.
Does that 4.4% budget increase year over year include the $110 million the city pulled from its reserves to create the Housing Accelerator Fund?
No, it doesn't. If you were to include that, the budget growth would be much smaller, something around 2%. But considering that was a one-time appropriation last year to accelerate housing, and so we were presenting it on an adjusted basis, not including that because that expenditure won't continue.
Can you say more about the non-personnel items where you found savings?
Yes, so many discretionary type costs in city department budgets, like materials and supplies, food. You might have noticed we have a very limited spread here at the breakfast this morning. So things like that, those smaller discretionary expenditures that we can kind of afford to pull back on at this time.
The criteria for what constituted a long-term vacancy that you eliminated?
Yeah, so we looked at positions that had been vacant and have had no activity in trying to fill them for over a year and eliminated those.
Okay, we'll transition to the scrum for any other questions.
Would any of the other councils want to add anything or any questions at this point? I know we'll have 100 hours apparently to talk about it. Okay, all right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Sorry, last thing, I just want to shout out some important partners in the room too. So Adam Chapdelaine from the Mass Municipal Association, thank you for leading cities everywhere. We have partners like Hassan Farouki from BCAN on our climate side, doing so much. I see Larry Calderon from our Boston Patrolmen's Association. Okay, thank you again. I can't.
Council, will you join our council photo?